I saw a headline today that says, Japan's prime minister intends to cut down cedar forests and replant them with varieties that produce less pollen in order to combat hay fever. Which sounds crazy, and it is, but maybe not for the reason you're thinking. To understand, first we need some context. After World War II, Japan wanted to become an industrial powerhouse, and part of that plan was to become self-sufficient as far as wood production. In order to do this, they ripped up a bunch of the native forests and replanted them with just Japanese cedar. Cedar is really useful for building, and it grows fast, so it seemed like a good cash crop at the time. Now, Japan has the largest cedar forests in the world, with over 20% of Japanese forests being cedar. There were multiple problems with this, and one that showed up 20 years later, when the trees that were planted matured, was an increase in cedar pollen and thus hay fever. But it also didn't work from an economic standpoint. There's been a decline in the price of cedar over the past 2 decades, and imported wood from Southeast Asia is more commonly used for building now. Japan used to produce 80% of the wood that it used domestically, but now it's down to 25%, with the rest coming from Southeast Asia. Now back to the headline and why it's crazy. It does make sense to replant the artificially planted cedar forests, but replanting them with a different strain that produces less pollen is not the answer. Especially since the demand for cedar is down, there's no reason for 20% of Japanese forests to be just cedar. Forests of a single species are detrimental to wildlife and increase the chances for natural disasters. Instead of changing to a slightly different variation that produces less pollen, it would make more sense to just replant the less economical native species they pulled up in the first place. I'm going to try to cover some more news stories, so tune in if you're interested in what's going on in Japan.